He's connecting. Brian, can you hear us? Brian, you're muted. We have to actually see it to make sure that it's there. Oh, I saw it. Say something. Hey, Brian, we're waiting for you to turn on your camera and your microphone, and then we can begin.
That's what that was what I thought. Yeah, so you looked at other well, they came, but we got to swim it. Yeah. Nice, garden size, right? Yeah, like little gnomes, but they have 2 legs. So, yeah, so I'm trying to find, it's like they're too expensive, like person color. Senior and plus. Yes, there's something like that, but it's a lot to do. Right. So I'm trying to figure out a way, because people are excited about it. Or maybe a glass blowing. Cool. I have a glass ball in my garden that I know a guy who he doesn't do it now, but he's making those. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, those are cool. Okay. That's another side. I will. I mean, because anyway, I can get it to represent it and then be, a decent price. Yeah. Yeah. So I'll put that. Yeah, that'll be on my list of my hunts. There you go. Okay.
I think it is. Here I'm sure.
It did last winter. First ran. Yeah, except my Girl Scout troops, the one in I don't know if it's still there, but it used to be behind where the True Value Hardware is there, or by the Tower Theater used to be.
No, this one was over on Jewett.
Okay. Was that one?
Post office.
Was it a paint your own pottery or was it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we might be talking about one of the same too.
Like fired out.
Fire up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my, okay. I wonder if someone gave them a student work with them and do it,
So let's see if he responds.
They have classes, maybe attend architect or something like that.
No luck getting.
I mean, he's on the line here.
I don't
Given that.
all I know is I don't want to.
Okay.
By myself.
Gotta be a roll call vote.
Oh, yeah, he's not going to be able to. So can you like message him through that app and say, hey, we can't see or hear it?
I can text him.
Good.
I just texted.
Oh, you
but
did text
I can
him?
see, yeah, I can do a message
Okay.
too. Maybe he'll see this. There he is.
Oh, there we go.
There's fine.
All right.
All right. Thanks, Brian.
Yep, no problem.
Okay, Brian's on the line, so we can go ahead and get started.
Okay. Welcome to the August 9th, 2022 Board of Zoning Appeals meeting. Please stand for pledge of allegiance.
Allegiance to the
flag
of the United States, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, take roll.
I will, yes. Brad Hemingway,
Here.
Brian Specht,
Present.
Brian Zoom. Sharon Mayer,
Here.
and Council Liaison Mellon.
Present.
Okay, we have a quorum.
Okay, our first item of business is approval of the minutes from the June 30th special meeting. Do I have any additions, deletions, or corrections?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to accept the minutes for June 30th, 2022.
Can I get a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you.
Okay, I have to do the roll call because it's.
Yes.
Brad Hemingway,
Yes.
Brian Specht,
Yes. Yes.
Okay. We also have minutes of the meeting from the July 12th, 2022 regular business meeting. Any additions, deletions, or corrections there?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to accept the minutes of July 12th, 2022.
Oh, I'm sorry. I do have one correction. Under the preliminary hearing for People's Bank, bottom of the first page, the dimensions, it says 33 inch and 34 inch. Should those be square inches? It's got the inch symbol.
what's the page number? Did you say?
One.
Okay, what page one?
Yeah, the second sentence from the bottom.
33 inches now. Yes, that should say 33 square feet.
Square feet,
34
okay.
Square feet. Yeah, we'll make that correction. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so other than that, I didn't have any other corrections. Can I get a second?
Yeah, just a minute. I'll second it.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Tom?
Okay, Brad Hemingway,
Yes.
Brian Specht,
Yes.
Yes. Okay, we have no preliminary hearings tonight. Moving on to public hearings, we have BZA docket number 22-011, Tim Overmeyer of Vanatco Signs on behalf of People's Bank, requesting variances regarding signage. Do we have anyone here to speak on that? Good evening. Please introduce yourself and provide your name and address.
I'm Tim Overmeyer with Vanatco Signs, 10625 State Road 10, Ferguson, Indiana. I work with Todd Shu with People's Bank, Worcester, and also Sherwood Shardy's back here with People's Bank, and Mike Shamal with People's Bank. Todd is the president, and Sarah is the senior vice president of marketing. So,
Okay.
looks like.
So if you'd like to give us a little briefing on what you're looking for.
Sure. We are looking for a variance for the sign on the side of the building that we have by the artwork right here. When we originally started talking about this, we were going to put a large People's Bank with the chevron, and then we decided the square footage is going to be way too much, it's over 60. So what we tried to do, we took the old variance and we tried to get as close as we could within that variance. We got our length is shorter and our square footage is a little bit less. We had 34 square foot before, now it's 33. The only thing we're changing is the height of the asking for 64, and we're only using the chevron in order to make this less obtrusive. The chevron is halo lit, which means the light comes out of the back of the sign. And this is a dark brick building, so there will not be a lot of light. It's not like a white building that shines out brightly. And the variance, as you know, is for the size of the chevron. You set back on the side street, and it's also on the third floor. Obviously, 24 inches what's allowed, and on the first floor, so this is what we're asking for.
Thank you for allowing me to talk. I'm Todd Shute. I'm president of People's Bank. Just on behalf of People's Bank, we've called Munster home for 40 years, and we're one of the top employers in the town. We're a committed corporate citizen and longtime supporter of the Munster community, including several town bonds and park district bonds that I've worked on myself. This sign is our new logo and announces ourselves to the community. It is professionally designed. It is unobtrusive like a billboard, so the residents would not see it as that way. And it does reflect the vibrancy of the community. Overall, it establishes our presence in the community, and we're asking today to replace what we had before, so it's visible to the travelers on Calumet Ave. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? Brian, do you have any questions for the petitioner?
No, I do not.
Okay, well, at this time, we'll open the meeting up to the public. If there's anyone that would like to run up and make a comment, this is the moment.
Should I stand aside?
There may be somebody on Zoom. Looks like
Okay.
somebody's raised their hand. Oh, here we go. Okay, somebody has raised their hand.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Michael, yep.
I'm sorry, I was going to say, please introduce yourself, provide your name and address.
Yep, Michael Gepfert, 10380 Oxford Place. Just want to say that I really like our sign ordinances. I think that the plan is great, the way that it's framed. I know that everybody wants a variance, but I'll say the same thing that I've said, and I think many people have commented in the past. If I'm going to People's Bank, which I do, I've never used the sign to get there. You know, I think everyone these days uses what's in their pocket. And if that building had zero signage on it, I'd still be walking in through the front door and going through the drive-through. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
There's one other person on Zoom, but they don't appear to be making to be unmuted. So I think that's it.
That's it. Okay. Well, based on that, then we will close the public hearing and bring it back to the board. I do have a question. So, Tom, are there 4 variances that we're looking at? I'm looking at this right here.
Yes. The first variance is from the prohibition on signs on elevations other than what's called the facade, which is the street facing elevation. So that's the first variance that's required. The second is from the maximum height for letters. So the maximum letter height, which is 24 inches. The previous variance had granted them a 23-inch high sign, tall sign, and they're proposing a 64-inch logo. Second, the third variance is from the overall sign height, which is 36 inches. Again, 46 inches was permitted by the previous variance, so they're proposing a 64-inch tall logo. And then the fourth variance is from the requirement that signs be on the first story facade. And they're proposing to install it on the third floor. So yes, there are 4 variances being requested. And some of it is, as I said, there was a previous variance granted that permitted a sign in that exact location. But they're changing the, the height and some things, the overall height of the sign. So that's why they had to come back through these different variances.
So in the previous variance back in 2008, they were allowed a sign on the west side, but it was 23 inches.
Yeah, that's
23-inch high letters, correct? And the overall sign was 2 lines of type. Is that why it was 46 overall?
Yeah, there's a photo of, I don't remember it from the last time. So you may recall this was that's the originally approved.
Okay.
So yeah, it's in the same location. But the arrangement is somewhat different.
Okay, so, but there in this design, there's no actual letters. It's this chevron, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so it's just one single unit.
Correct.
So, based on the previous variance at 46 inches was the total height of the sign, and now that they're looking for 64 inches tall.
That's correct. Square footage is similar, a little bit less, and the total height was 34, and this one's 33.7.
When you calculate the area, I know there was a discussion here. There was page 9. When the area was calculated on the People's Bank, did it go in just one large box around, one large rectangle around where it's People's Bank?
No, I don't believe so. I think it was kind of drawn very tightly towards the, around the letters.
Okay.
So it's a little bit different from the way we do it now.
Okay.
We now just basically draw a simple geometric shape like a rectangle or a circle or a square. We don't,
Mm-hmm.
So there's sort of an empty space
Right.
in the
That's built into it. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Okay. I think I got it. Any questions, further discussion needed on this request of board members? Okay. Based on that, do I have a motion?
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to accept the variance for the 22011
As presented.
as presented.
Do I have a second?
The second.
Brian, Andrew.
Sorry, Brian, can you repeat that? Is that second?
Yeah.
Okay.
You believe there was a second?
Well, I was asking, I'm the only one that can make the second because Sharon's chairman, correct?
Correct.
That's right.
All right. I'll second it.
Okay, based on that, Tom, will you take the roll?
Yeah. Brad Hemingway,
Yes.
Brian Specht,
Yes.
Sharon Mayer.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries.
Okay, we have 3 findings of fact. We'll take them individually. Or can we do them en masse? What's the
I'd
protocol?
say either way is probably fine, but you,
Well, based on Brian.
Right.
So we're going to do all 3 findings of fact as one vote. Do we have any additions, corrections, deletions to these 3 findings of fact? We have BZA docket number 22006, Paul Katz on behalf of Munster Church. BZA docket number 22008, Larry Gill on behalf of Temple Bethel. And BZA docket number 22-009, Janine Graham on behalf of Jim Metzbach.
Motion,
Yes.
make a motion to accept the docket number 22-006, 008, and 009. Finding of facts.
I will make a second on those.
Very good.
okay, I'll take a roll then. Brad Hemingway,
Yes.
Brian Speck.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Okay. We do not have any additional items for discussion as far as I know.
I'll just mention just very briefly that we held a kickoff meeting for the Munster Comprehensive Plan last week, and I know that a number of you were interviewed as part of the stakeholder interviews. The advisory committee met along with some members of the BZA and some members of the Plan Commission on Thursday evening to get a sort of presentation from our consultants on the timeline, the scope of the project, the number of meetings that will be required for the advisory committee, and to do sort of a beginning sort of goals and objectives type of exercise where people talk about the priorities for the plan. So that's sort of the first bit of public involvement that we have. Right now, the website is live, and I should have pulled it up here, but I'll email it out to those who haven't received it already. There's 2 things that you can do on the website. One is a survey, and there's just a resident survey or an interested party survey, but then there's also a segment if you have a business, you can answer a few extra questions. And then there's also an application called map.social, which is kind of like an interactive mapping tool that you can start to place things on a Google map, say like, this is good, this is something that we want to see more of, this is a bad intersection that needs to get fixed, this is an area of town that we want to see redeveloped, things like that. So you can start to, it's kind of like drawing on a map, when you go to these meetings, everyone just draws on a map, but this will be up for probably the first third of the, maybe through the entire duration of the plan, so that people will be able to cumulatively start adding things onto the map, and then it will give some direction as far as some things that we want to do for the comprehensive plan. So that's up and running. The next thing that we'll do is we'll have a visioning workshop, and then we'll have a business roundtable. So those are the 2 next public involvement things that we're going to be working on. They haven't been scheduled yet, but they'll be coming up in the next month or so, probably 2 months. And ultimately, we want to have the plan completed by before the end of next year. So it's about a 14 to 16 month process. And when it's done, we'll have basically a full comprehensive plan. It'll have a land use framework, a transportation plan, some economic development planning recommendations, some recommendations on housing, open space, public art, civic spaces, and it should be good for another 10 years.
But yeah, when I was here, I had asked, and I don't recall his name now, but I had asked him when I remember the last one that was done, but I didn't remember the year. I thought he said it was 12 years ago.
Yeah, 2010 is when the last master plan was adopted.
So and then I asked him, well, how did we do? Did we meet our objectives? And he didn't know the answer to that. He said that would be something that would be evaluated during this process.
Yeah, that 2010 plan is an interesting plan. And I actually talked to the consultant who did it not that long ago. And it's a really good plan it was a great plan for Munster, but it was actually more of a redevelopment plan than an actual comprehensive plan. So our plan that we're going to have at the end of this process is going to look a little bit different than this. It's probably going to be have a lot more sort of general principles and goals and objectives in it that weren't part of that 2010 plan. There will be some very specific focus areas that we're going to look at. We're going to do some, conceptual planning for different parts of town. We haven't decided where that's going to be yet. It's kind of, we're going to wait and see where, the public involvement pushes us. But yeah, I would say that, I think the 2010 plan was good. I think there are some great projects that are in there that were accomplished, and I think there's some interesting plans and projects and priorities that we want to just bring into the new plan as well that we haven't done for whatever reason. So yeah, we're not going to toss that one out. I think it's just going to be reevaluated, and the things that ultimately the advisory committee and the people who are involved, they think we should bring them forward. We'll keep them. If we think it's not something that we can do or we want to do anymore, then we won't include it. So, but yeah, off the top of my head, I'm not thinking of anything in particular that's going to get cut from that point. Obviously, the Lake Business Center is probably the biggest example, though, because that was anticipated to be where the South Shore Station was going to be. So there's this, it's almost like the centerpiece of the plan, right? This really great site plan for town center and all that. So
that was going to be the town. Yeah, it was perfect. So,
yeah, it would have been awesome if we could do that, but anyway, so that's obviously one thing that's going to get cut. But
very good. Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay. So anything else?
That's all I've got for now.
Okay. So our next regular business meeting is September 13th. And all those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
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 Okay.
I think Brad make that motion and Brian second.
Good motion to adjourn.
I don't know what Tom said, but I'm sure it was sarcastic.
Brian, are you going to stay on for the plan commission, or are you going to?
If you need me to, I can. If not, I'm going to jump on an airplane, but I can stay for a little while.
Okay. Well, I don't think we're going to need you, but if you want to just hang around and.
Okay. I'll hang around. My flight got delayed, so I've got probably about an hour. So I'll hang around.
Okay.
Is it Tom? Same. I don't have to. It's the same call, right?
Yeah. You can stay on the line there.
The new thing is on United. So, and this happened, or I just realized it with my husband and I are going to Key West in December, and we bought round trip tickets that were direct flights.
Which is, yep.
And the going there got changed to a flight with a connection for 16 minutes in Newark. Like, there's no way
Ah.
I'm getting stuck
Hey,
in
call
Newark.
That just doesn't.
You were hoping to sit in the back.
Especially since they're not taking off
Did
that
it?
time.
Nice to see you.
I haven't left on time.
You doing
Yeah,
okay?
I've gotten on a plane, they act like, and then you don't leave.
And then you don't go.
Yes, thank you for
Right.
saying that.
I mean, that's the closest I've got to my time.
It's just been awful. It's been absolutely awful.
Well, I heard there's one here too. for
So I don't know, and
Yeah.
then, so do you get to come non-stop? See you, Brett.
No, so when so they canceled the non-stop. They
Yeah.
don't have it anymore. So then the only other option was to
Happy summer.
fly through
Yeah,
Newark.
doing well. Knock wood, both of them. Thank you.
Or, no, I think it's back. So the
Take it easy.
flight that we wanted flew through Orlando. I'm like,
Okay.
okay, we're not gonna get stuck in Newark or in Orlando.
See you. Happy summer.
Oh, thank you, same to you.
I know. But it only, when we booked, okay, so when we booked it, it was a nonstop.
Mhm.
Then they changed it to a connection in Orlando with a 2-hour layover, which
That's
was
Let me do this
okay.
first.
Yeah,
I mean, long,
at least
but
you get stuck, you're like you said too, you're closer and you're
you're
not.
right, and you're not subject to weather, hopefully delay. But then they changed, the flight they changed a second time to a 16-minute layover. And so our only other option was to then go through Newark. And I'm like, I am not going to Newark. I'm gonna be in Key West,
You're
okay?
facing, yeah, you're facing snow possibilities twice, like you, well,
Yeah, so what ended up ultimately happening was, I'm like, I just want my money back. I just want my money back. And we ended up having to pay a little more and go through Delta instead of United.
you know, but they're doing that all the time, so that's the thing.
Did I sign
You
you?
want your,
Oh, sure.
hi, how are you, Rachel?
All of them.
Hi, hello.
Zoning is over, huh?
Yeah, wasn't a long one tonight.
That's great. Oh, where's my?
I took your baby markers somewhere. See, this is me, I get to choose, switch, I roll. And this is you here.
Okay, so let's go over grab.
Yeah, just grab.
Okay.
Great. It's been busy,
Yeah.
but I've had house full. I mean, I had 6, my house is just like Grand Central.
Yeah.
My, both kids are home. Sure. At the other day, I had 16 kids at my house. I'm not kids. I'm not, no, it's fine. I don't care.
Yeah.
They're just students. I had 6 last night. It was Sam's birthday tomorrow. And so he had 6 kids in the night, but then they didn't leave. Half of them just stayed. Half of them are still there, and a whole new group came.
Oh, wow.
And they're having fun.
They're getting all the fun.
Yeah.
We're
Good night, sir.
Yeah.
It was good. Good luck with that flight. I know I'll see you before then, but that's the new way. It's like, okay, so they entice you because I only want to book nonstop.
Me
So
too.
they got you to do it. Then you had to go.
And then they do that.
They know they're gonna do it. And then what they'll play, the game they play, talking about how they change the play after you schedule it, is that you'll say, well, it should cost less. And they say, no, that flight's just high because now it is just as high. So Mike has started taking snapshots of, so at least if you
When you
booked it, like, so what was the layover?
Right.
How much did that cost? So obviously, you might pay more.
It's hard.
Timing and
Yeah,
all
that's
stuff.
a lifelong
So,
struggle. It's like my
because
golf
they say-
game.
At least look at it then, you know what it was, but if you try to tell them now,
Now
like,
you don't know what it was.
so you don't know what it was, and they're like,
Right.
no, it's higher now, because it's later.
Right.
And
Hillary.
it's
Oh,
really
yeah.
frustrating.
Oh, it is. And the same thing was happening to my son. He's coming home and he's gonna do the Chicago Marathon
Oh,
in
I
October.
understand.
So he's coming home for that.
Yeah.
And
Because
so he
I,
booked
on the new
nonstop, both ways.
Mhm.
you know, they've changed.
Go online. Both of them now have
And
connections
it
in
seems like
Denver.
they have more of a mechanical.
It's like,
It's just-
you have no option
With the
because
waterfall.
they're, even if you got the money back, it would cost you more now to book
So maybe the
book that much.
waterfall was.
And you know
where
what they're
the
doing? They're-
Catskills were officially-
We were talking about when we used to fly.
Yeah,
A lot of
right.
times we might get lucky, there might be a seat in between us.
So
You know, we like-
it's been my experience.
That never
that
happens now,
those
they're
are-
completely
Oh, they
full.
pull everything.
Which I understand, it's not,
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
gotta make money, right?
but they have all the flights, and then they pare them down as they get, I'm sure they have a benchmark like 6 months out, 4 months out.
Right.
And that's why you get those.
Sure.
But it's
Yeah.
hard, like you're planning something, you know, we set often with max maximize.
But isn't the
when
new
we Get
one,
in, we're
don't
like,
they
we're
have
going right to
renderings
maybe
of
a
the
show
new
that
car?
night.
Oh,
We
yeah.
better not anymore because.
Well, we're going Thursday, we're going to Denver to see our daughter. And we're going straight to Rocky Mountain National Park. So they have, this is on South.
And the girl sent them to my house because that's where everyone was meeting to get in the cars and go drive. And so we came out and they left the next day. No, I didn't even open them. I handed them to the girl who bought them when they came back Sunday night. I just handed them to but the lady was going to refund her and make another when
Are we doing that?
So you're not.
No.
7:30. Yes, sir.
Nope. Yeah, I was surprised by.
Is this out of time?
It is.
All right, I'm calling this meeting of the Planning Commission for the Town of Munster to order for Tuesday, August 9th, 2020. Would you all set your phones to stun and please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Van, would call the roll, please? Councilor Mellon.
Present.
Councilor Kulturitis.
Present.
Councilor Tulowitzki is absent. Rachel Brannigan.
Present.
Brian Specht. He's still on Zoom. Looks like he has dropped off, so he is absent. Chairman Raffin is absent. In his place, Vice Chairman Bill Baker. Present. Okay, we have a quorum. Square. All right, so next is the approval of the minutes. We'll combine the June 14th regular meeting as well as the June 30th special meeting. And is there any motions, modifications? Would say you.
We accept the minutes as given.
There's a motion. Is there a second? Any discussion? Either none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Moving right along. Next up, preliminary hearings. First up, PC 22-014, Image Resource Group on behalf of CA Health and Science Trust, etc., to revise the site signs plan for the Lake Business Center PUD at 9200 Calumet Avenue. Mr. Vanderwood, please introduce this one.
Thank you. This is an application that was submitted, as you said, by CA Health and Science Trust, the current owner of the eastern portion of the Lake Business Center planned unit development at 9200 Calumet Avenue. It's currently zoned as a planned unit development, as I stated, and they are seeking approval for an amendment to that. They're seeking an amendment to that planned unit development in order to replace their existing signage plan. You may recall that the Plan Commission in 20
years ago.
Yeah, right. In 2010, I believe it was, or 2011, April 2014, approved a comprehensive signage plan that's included in your packet. It includes wayfinding signs, some guidelines for signs on the building, as well as just sort of overall development branding signs. Since in the intervening years, I should say that some of those signs have been installed, others haven't. When CA Health and Science Trust purchased the property, they approached the town with a concept to sort of rebrand the Lake Business Center as a medical office center. And so consequently, they have some different ideas for how to move people and vehicles throughout the site. So they're proposing an overall kind of replacement for that signage plan. This is a preliminary hearing tonight. So what we would be asking for would be just simply a discussion of their proposal, and then setting a public hearing for next month. Because it's a planning and development amendment, it would be forwarded to the town council with a recommendation either to approve or to not approve. Ultimately, it goes to the town council. I have included in the packet both the existing sign plan, the adopted sign plan, and their proposed plan. I'm going to pull some of this up on the screen here. I won't go through all of it because it gets a little kind of tedious to.
Thank you on behalf of everybody. And is the continuity between the old portion or the back portion or west portion of Lake Business Center and this setup tied into anything that has to be meeting an ordinance?
Yeah, so the current ordinance in place is that existing signage plan. That is part of the planning and development approval, and so it's part of the zoning.
The original one.
Correct, for this area. So with the replacement of that plan, like I said, this would be adopted by the council as part of that planning and development ordinance. I will say that there are some guidelines in our zoning ordinance with respect to planning and developments, and that's noted in the report. Essentially what it states is that within a planning and development, signs should comply with the standards for the CD5 zoning district. So that's no different actually from the CD4 A or B district. The signs are actually the same sign standards. So you'll see in my report, there are some comments that I've provided that compare what they're proposing to what our existing CD5 standards would be.
But the continuity, I mean, how I drive through that development is not going to be affected in any way if we modify one portion to the new ordinance versus keeping the old ordinance in the other portion.
No, not really, because as I said, the majority of the wayfinding signs for the Lake Business Center were never actually installed.
Really?
Yeah. In fact, I think the monument sign that was installed.
It was just installed in 2000, like January of this year.
That was prior to your ownership? Or
It was right after our ownership. The seller was required to do it as part of the sale.
Okay.
For the record, excuse me, Tom, that Councilman Tulowitzki has arrived.
Thank you.
I'm helping you out, kid.
I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
So, so although the building signs have been held to the restrictions of that existing sign plan, it said none of the way from. We could go through that existing plan if you wanted to.
No.
But there's a lot of, like I said, wayfinding signs. There are some sort of overall site signage, like identifying the site, but really only that monument sign was constructed. The individual buildings do have like small post signs at the entries and things like that that are part of that plan. But like I said, this plan is much more focused on a sort of medical pathology.
Okay. And if we, before we bring it back to the commission, would this also include what would happen to Outlot 7 or the North Outlot in the future? Or if they subdivide that out, would that be something that would go through a different process?
There's currently no signs in this proposal that really relate to that undeveloped outlot.
Because you know that's going to get developed.
Yes, I hope it does.
Okay.
This signage plans, like I said, we can kind of page through it here, but you'll see it's just a wayfinding plan. It just identifies, it doesn't really have a whole lot to say with the buildings. It identifies building entrances, A, B, C, or 1, 2, 3, and it identifies particular parking lots. So if you're driving, and they can really explain it.
Yeah, and they'd be happy to just give like a 5-minute
Hold
summary.
on a second. Thank you.
So that's really what it is. It doesn't really talk about, well, if you're going to put a sign on the building for a specific tenant, because there's really no building signage on this north building here.
Thank you. Okay, so let's bring it back to the commission. Before we set this for a public hearing, is there any concerns that you all have as it relates to what this project is? And do you see a benefit to having somebody speak on behalf of the ownership?
They don't speak, but I don't have any questions right now.
Yes, ma'am, have at it. Please come up to the podium, say your name and address for the record.
Thank you. My name is Gloria Duffy. I'm Senior Vice President for CA Health and Science Trust. As Tom noted, we purchased 9200 Calumet Lake Business Center back in September of 2021. So we're very
Congratulations.
Excited. Thank you.
Welcome to the neighborhood.
We are excited to be here. And, I want to make sure that we convey that to you. We're very excited about being in Munster. We love the location. We love the opportunity. As Tom also stated, we're a medical office real estate in focus. I myself used to work for Northwestern, so I have kind of a medical office history on how it's managed, how it's perceived, how we do wayfinding, et cetera. So we're very excited about the opportunity here. We do want to make the buildings kind of a medical office focus. As part of that, when you have patients who are stressed and in need of care, or maybe, you know, not completely just stressed about their knee surgery or taking someone and dropping them off, they want to come into our campus and know that they can find their doctor. The doctors want to be able to convey to the patients, like, this is how you get to us, this is the easiest way of travel. And so we think by suggesting this signage package that we worked on, and that is similar to places like Northwestern, or even within the community at Franciscan Health or community hospital across the street, it really kind of helps direct people there. So this signage package we think is good for the campus. It will tie in with our interior signage. So if you're a tenant, a doctor can say, come in, park in the orange parking lot, come in the orange entrance, and then once you're in the entrance, you follow, you know, the signs right to our space. So we're really trying to make this comprehensive and user-friendly for the existing campus. And then to your questions, we own the 2 development lots adjacent. If we develop those in the future, those would have a medical office land, and we would suggest include, you know, changing signage to make it cohesive throughout the campus or directional. Are there any questions or any other? Did you hear me?
Any questions for this young lady? So it's just directional, nothing with relations to the monument sign or anything along Calumet Avenue?
No, nothing along Calumet at this time. I know it says monument throughout the package, but that's really just signage at the entrances that identifies which medical tenants you can find in each entrance. Again, tying with the wayfinding.
Just out of curiosity, is there a rebranding?
I think in the future, we would like to change this to Lake Medical Campus instead of Lake Medical Center instead of Lake Business Center. Just to kind of really drive home that this is a medical campus.
Thank you.
All right.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, I have one for Tom, and I'm trying to like cross-reference, but so these don't have the masonry base that's required. They're all metal?
Correct. There's a couple different kinds of signs being proposed. There are directional signs, which are.
Did the requirement in the new ordinances change, Tom, that they don't have to match the building facade anymore?
No, there's no requirement that signs match a building facade. There is a requirement that they have a masonry base for a monument type sign.
Thank you.
In the monument, we do permit a post type of a sign, which doesn't have to have a masonry base. But so these are the what they call the directional signs. You can see they're sort of like a metal cabinet construction. Those are by far the largest signs that they're proposing. They're 9 feet tall. And then they have within the parking lots these smaller directional signs. Okay, and those are also metal cabinets. You can see where they're proposed basically on either end of the parking aisles, parking bays, I should say. And then they have at the entrances to the buildings to identify specific tenants, place with those post signs, which are currently required by the sign guidelines. They're proposing these cabinet signs, which are.
And what's the height of those?
Those are 6 foot 10 inches.
And that means specification of the new ordinance, 6 feet. So that's as tall as I am.
6 feet is the maximum height for a monument sign in our code. They provided this illustrative comparison right there. And then
those are going by the building itself.
Right.
replacing the smaller ones that are there?
Exactly. Those would be installed by the doors. They would indicate which entrance. And then they're also proposing to install these numbers at each entrance.
So
Yeah.
how many of those signs are going up? It looks like there's a whole bunch of signs going up.
So there's six.
Six of those small 6-footers?
Correct.
And then 4 of the other ones that have just A, B parking lots in the parking areas too?
So there are 6 directional signs. 3 of them are the tall, 10-foot tall ones, and then 3 of them are the shorter 6'9" directional signs.
We have 6 entrances to the building. I just want to point out, it's not like one entrance with 6 signs, it's 6 separate entrances.
Well, I understand that, but you're putting the letter up on the doors that they're supposed to go into, so I'm trying to understand why you need the 6-foot signs if you have letter A, letter B, or letter C in regards to the entrances.
Yeah, I think we're happy to take comments on any of this and adjust, but I think the important thing is, you know, the color and the entrance. So if you're a doctor and you say go in the green entrance, like the color is there. I mean, I'm sure we can make adjustments to the numbers or letters if that's helpful. But I think the important thing is having the tenant names in that entrance and the color just to help direct people.
It's a total of 6 signs.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I think I do agree that being in the parking lot, because I've been in, that it is, it can be somewhat confusing because I've had appointments inside. And so I agree with that. My concern is that the building that since you purchased it, it looks so much nicer than it did before. And so that's my opinion, but so I would hate when I look at those signs being that tall, especially since this is a lower building and it's like a lower profile, it just seems
Too large.
Too much. And so, and also the sign out front is nice looking with has, I believe it's some bricks and then is it the wood siding, kind of wood looking siding, but the masonry, I mean, since that is part of our code, that's part of our ordinance. I don't know, it just might look nicer, but they just seem to be overwhelming it. I do think direction is needed, definitely, but that would be my comment, to see them just complement the building and not overwhelm the building.
Okay.
I agree with what you're saying, Leanne, and I also think that it would be pretty easy to speak to the building just because there is that masonry base. You know, you could easily make that coordinate.
Okay.
And the size
Absolutely,
that we
let's go.
require, right? I mean, why does it need to be that long?
I think in our opinion, it needs to be that tall because again, you're dealing with people who are ill, may not see well, maybe elderly, or, you know, just have different issues. And so we're trying to make it as clear as possible that they know where they're going. So we can definitely work on sizing of the concept or in our signs, but the idea is to kind of match what other health systems are doing and to just make wayfinding easy for those who are in need and under stress.
Anything else for the good of order? If not, we're looking for a motion about setting this for a public hearing.
Well,
We set it for public hearing.
Councilwoman, you have something?
I was saying, well, the motion's been made. I was going to say that it should be the proposed sign plan be revised to conform substantially with the sign standards of Division 7 of the zoning ordinance as if the property were in character of District CD5 and resubmit prior to the public hearing.
Would you like to see that? Is that the motion?
Yeah.
To the staff, thank you.
I second that. I hear a second on that, so I second that.
The motion needs to be about the public hearing, not about recommendations. Unless I'm missing something, Mr. Whitcomb. This is the public sector, and you know, I do well in that.
Well,
I
I'm
think-
combining it.
I think the motion was to set the public hearing
Okay,
and instruct the applicant to revise the sign plan in accordance with.
thank you. And that's Dr. Kulturitis' motion, or is that Councilwoman
I think
Melons?
it was Council.
And I will second. And if there's a second, is there any discussion?
Just a question of how substantial in your view a change is that to bring it into substantial conformance with the standards? Is it tweaking or is it a wholesale, like, also kind of curious from the applicant?
I think it's pretty substantial. From.
Hold on a second. Is that question to the, or is it to staff?
Well, I'd like to know from Tom if that
Thank you. Hold on a second.
is how drastic a change needs to be made to the signage plan to bring it in conformation.
It would involve reducing the height and area of a number of the signs. And it would involve changing the materials of most of the signs.
Okay, so height and materials of the signs, but not number of signs. And then it's more event to the applicant, I suppose. The important thing is that you can go to the green lot, the orange lot, the yellow lot, and that the numbers match it so that the font and the size of the number and the name of the entrance you might be able to maintain.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's can you find your way? Like dermatology has been around forever. They're right in the middle of the building. They're difficult to find, right? And so when we look at this, we're like, how are we going to find Dr. Soleimani, right? And so by having his name up there in a font that's larger is more helpful to find it. So that's why we're trying to use, kind of 3 different means to get people to him. So I think from our perspective, we obviously like what we're presenting and we think it's kind of medical office. We're happy to hear, feedback, but I think that going all the way back to the current standards might be difficult, trying to kind of take what we're presenting and dialing it all the way back.
So I have another question for the applicant.
Yes, ma'am.
So I'm just saying, so if I were going to actually offend that doctor, so if I were, but it's my first time to go and he says, or the office says entrance 2, if that's easily seen, is it as important that, and maybe the answer is yes, but that all of the names be on there? Because if you know you're going through the right entrance, if there's something inside that then directs you, I don't know, because you're going to still need direction once you get inside. So I don't know. It's just a thought.
I think it's important to the doctors because they want to be seen. I know we've had conversations with Dr. Soleimani and a lot of our tenants around signage and wayfinding in general. So I would say to him, it's important specifically because he doesn't have a window line or some place to kind of put his signage out for the public. So that's why it's important to, I think, all of our users is to have some kind of presence on the wayfinding signage.
Yeah. I find the building, when I last went there sometime last year, to be pretty confusing. The parking lot's pretty confusing. Where do you go? So I'm in favor of making it really functional so it works for the doctors, it works for patients who are coming. So it seems there might be a middle ground between some of the signs that are 10 feet tall and pretty far out of bounds from what the ordinances are. And I can understand for medical use, maybe strict conformance to the tight tolerances might not serve your facility. So I don't know how to put that into a motion. That's just what's.
There's already a motion, Councilman.
Right. So this is just in
this is
discussion.
Still getting to a public hearing.
I think this would be an improved presentation for the public hearing if you make an attempt to really keep it functional for your tenants and the potential users and get closer to conforming, or as close as possible to conforming.
Okay.
Is that clear?
So find a middle ground between what we're presenting and what's existing, and we'll do our best by the next public hearing to find.
I mean, that's just one input from one, member of the commission.
One input. The other input is from a front, having the front door of the development. Are any of your signages having any indication of what happens in the west side of the development?
No.
And all of the easements will go through your property for all those folks to be able to get back to those businesses?
You're talking about the industrial buildings?
Yes.
No, so this is just for our buildings, nothing for.
So the majority of the folks that go to those businesses, to your knowledge, do they use the ingress and egress we're looking at here tonight?
They're not supposed to. There's actually signage up saying.
They're not supposed to, but that's not the question.
Infrequently.
Thank you.
The trucks don't have the turning radius, so they generally don't even try.
It's always truck traffic.
Yeah.
A lot of truck traffic?
Occasional, not, I wouldn't say frequent.
How would you, to help me as somebody that's not there and hasn't paid as much attention to that development maybe as you all have recently, how much truck traffic are you seeing in and out of that western part of that development?
In and out of the western part through our part?
No,
or
just in
and out?
general, just in paying attention.
I don't know anything outside of our campus.
So when you look, you don't see anything outside of the boundaries of your development?
Not that I can answer, I don't keep track of it.
Okay.
I mean, I'm sure I've seen trucks come and go, but I couldn't tell you how many per hour.
Thank you. Just in general.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah. Oh, and then to Councilman, to one of your points is that from a development perspective, dealing with tenants, they always want to put their signs up as big as possible in as many places as possible with their brand on it as much as they possibly can.
Yeah, and in this case, if it would need to be less emphasized on the brand, but more, since they're mostly medical facilities, the name of the medical facility or the doctor where.
That's the brand.
Right, but I'm seeing the sign Munster Specialty with logos. The community healthcare system logo and big versus just lettering.
So take out the logo, perhaps just do the lettering, and that'll reduce the signage.
Yeah, I mean, that could be a way to go, just so that I'm mostly concerned with the tenants, that they know which doctor they're going to and they can get there. It's entrance 2 and I go through this door and they know how to get there.
Yeah.
To maybe not have the emphasis be on advertising or branding. And that's why we've gone to beyond the zoning guidance. That's less desirable than if it really needs to be larger so that we can find their way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I would say signage is the biggest tenant complaint that we have, and we are at risk in our renewal conversations around signage. So this is definitely something we'd love to.
Having done this for a living, the response is the location is outstanding.
I'm sorry.
Having done this for a living, the response to that tenant is your location is outstanding.
Yes, and that's what we're saying. But we also like to solve problems for our tenants and retain them too. But I agree.
Anything else? Got a motion in a second, anything? Mr. Vanderwood, roll call, please.
Okay, Councilor Melvin?
Yes.
Councilor Kulturitis?
Yes.
Councilor Tulowitzki?
Yes.
Rachel Brannigan?
Yes.
And Phil Baker?
Yes. Thank you. See you next time. Next up is PC 22-015 CA Healthcare or Science Trust and Pavlaki Sign Company. How did I do? On behalf of Rush University Medical Group requesting approval of the development plan for Rush University Medical Group at the Lake Business Center PUD. Please introduce that, Mr. Vanderwood.
Okay, so these are the same petitioners.
We couldn't combine them and do the whole thing at once?
Well, there's some nuance to it, so that's why I thought it would be good to keep them separate.
Here's the nuances.
Let me pull this up here. So this petition is for approval of a development plan, as you said, for the adapted office building portion of the Lake Business Center, which is shown on this aerial here. It's currently South Suburban Surgical Suites is a tenant there. This came to the board in
Can you show the aerial first, please?
So let's see.
So this is right behind Noodles.
Yes.
Right at the light at Franklin.
So this is an older image here. This is the building that I'm talking about. It's considered the adapted office building. That's what it was labeled in the.
Go to the next page there.
Plan. So you can see that in 2019 and in 2020, it was built out with, a portion of it was built out with South Suburban Surgical Suites. And at that time, the developer, along with, or I should say the property owner, along with South Suburban Surgical Suites, appeared before the Plan Commission and received approval for a development plan. As part of that plan, in addition to the interior build out of a portion of that building, the facade was improved. It was improved from a metal shed warehouse looking building to a masonry clad office building with storefront. And a parking lot was installed with lighting and landscaping. At the time of the approval, it was noted that the Lake Business Center master plan required for that building a 181 space parking lot. South Suburban Surgical Suites petitioned to construct only 129 spaces. The assumption that they would not need 181 spaces. And the former owner of the property, Simborg Group, presented a letter committing to installing the remainder of the spaces at the time that the remainder of the building was built out. So that's a little bit of the background.
Was it recorded?
It was not recorded, but the planning and development is the ordinance, and that is on the books. So basically, the Plan Commission gave them a waiver from the requirement. The requirement is still in place, but the Plan Commission waived it temporarily.
Mr. Wickland, is that Ramaca land?
Good question.
Thanks. Can you get back to us on that one, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
So now that a new tenant is going into the east side of the building, Rush University Medical Center, there are two things that need to come before the Plan Commission as part of the development plan. It's kind of like the completion of the development plan that was approved in 2019. And that is one, the parking lot. So the completion of the parking lot, as I stated. And then two, because the facade of the building has already been constructed, it's simply the signage that needs to get approved by the plan.
So these 65 spaces is what's in question as far as parking, but what's in front of us is only the signage requirements. The development plan should include the parking, shouldn't it?
So, yes. So when we spoke to the applicant about this requirement, they had essentially said the same thing that South Suburban Surgical Suites said at the time that they were told about the 181 space parking requirement. What they said was, we don't actually need that many spaces. No intentions of the adapted office building. So they are also requesting that those additional spaces be essentially postponed until the building to the south, which is called the future office building, is constructed. Okay, so they're, like I said, they're here as part of this development plan. And what they're requesting is essentially that the development be postponed. So that's the first question that needs to be resolved tonight. And what they've done is, I'm going to go back to,
this is only requesting a public hearing though, right, Tom?
Right.
Okay, just making sure.
That's right. So in our conversations with the applicant, we talked about a few different options. And those are shown on this drawing that they prepared. The first option would be simply not constructing the parking lot at all until this building to the south is built. The second option that they proposed was constructing the 51 spaces within the north, what's called the north outlot. So directly adjacent to Calumet Avenue here in this currently vacant space. This parking lot design is part of the Lake Business Center master plan. It was always just anticipated that it would be constructed at the time that a building was constructed on this lot. So that's the second option that they've proposed. If the plan commission is insistent on requiring the 51 spaces to be constructed, they would prefer to build them here because that would benefit the tenants to the west that we were just talking about the wayfinding signage for. And then the third option obviously would be building the spaces as shown on the master plan for the adapted office building. Okay, so either way, it's 51. Option 2 and option 3 are both the construction of 51 spaces. It's just a question of where they're located. So that's the first question that we'd like to have resolved. And there is no detailed plan of either of those, right? So we don't have the actual engineering plans or the lighting or the landscaping plans for option 2 or 3 because the applicant is hoping to get direction from the plan commission which way to go prior to the public hearing so they can prepare the appropriate plans. And then the second,
we're getting there.
Yep, it's like I said, it's a little bit of a unique situation here. The second aspect of this development plan that wasn't resolved was the signage. As we talked about under the previous application, previous petition, there is a comprehensive signage plan for Lake Business Center, but it specifically doesn't include this building. It's noted on the cover of that document, does not address the adapted office building. I don't know why that is. I wasn't here in 2011.
Blame it on that guy.
But
it's in Lake County way.
But be that as it may, this particular building finds itself in a planning development with no real planning and development guidance for the signage. So what we would propose would be similar to what we talked about in the previous petition, the CD5 sign standards be applied to this building as well. So what we would be asking for from the plan commission would be to review these signs as under this development plan and make a recommendation as far as should they comply with these sign standards or not. It's a bit of an odd situation, like I said, because the only rules that we have are sort of the rules that are defaulted to. And so in a sense, it's a little bit discretionary. But those are the two aspects of the development plan that they're seeking approval for. Normally, we would just go straight to a public hearing on a development plan, but for a couple of reasons, one of which was the applicants wanted to have this discussion with you and get your recommendations and guidance before preparing detailed plans. We've brought them here to a preliminary hearing.
Thank you.
We'd be seeking a public hearing for next one.
I'll bring it back to the board. Any comments, please, to help these folks spend money here?
In regards to the first matter of the option 2 versus option 3, option 2 makes much more sense to have those spaces, you know, it's a new tenant, so it might get, hopefully get more traffic. Where the parking is proposed seems to be basically across from the building. So it could still, in a shared parking setup, could still very well service the Rush building, but also provide more parking for the existing structures. That seems logical from my view.
Thank you, Councilman. Anybody else?
Yes. Question I have is if you actually go with option 2, which makes sense to me, when you actually develop the building where it's not developed yet, probably gonna have to put some more parking spots over there, I'm guessing, too. So I mean, I just make sure you're going to be putting
more parking spots in, because I can't imagine you having enough parking space in that option 3 area if you put that new building in there in the future too.
So
I mean,
this
the
is.
sheer parking, I mean, I'm trying to visualize this building that may not be there for another 20 years, but once you put a building in there, there's gonna actually need to be some additional parking for that area also. So I like the idea of going with option 2, but you guys have to be mindful that if you guys decide to build another building, we're gonna be telling you where they're gonna park, and I don't think there's enough parking spots between the existing building and the new building to just build a building. In regards to the signage, the question I have is, are you're only interested in putting on the sign right on the 2 corners, or it's going to note just the rush, or are you going to start putting a whole bunch of the other directional signs in that area too? My question, because if they're just putting up the signage the way they're presenting it here, that makes sense. Everybody can know exactly where they need to go in regards to that. So I don't have a problem with the signage there. As long as they follow the guidelines in regards to the size of the building. So that's just my 2 cents.
Thank you. Unfortunately for the new developers, I'm the only one left from the first time the town did a deal for a PUD, and this is it. And there was a lot of things that are interesting, to say the least. But one of the concerns is that lot 7 was the most valuable lot. So one of the issues that we have in redeveloping a big manufacturing facility is don't buy it and then develop all of the frontage to make it all quick service restaurants. And then that's how you make your money, and it doesn't matter what happens in the back. So one of the concerns was to always try to look at it as a big picture type of a scenario. So that's some of the history associated to this. Also, since we've not evolved, I would say more of changed the way that we make the rules, is to not have as much parking along Calumet Avenue. So that also has an impact as it relates to the valuable lot or valuable real estate that sits along Calumet Avenue, how that's going to work. So one of my questions and how this gets worked out with the staff, not to be resolved tonight, is how are you going to handle that parking scenario to the point of it's just another fast food restaurant willing to give you $2 million for a freaking 1 acre lot and put a parking lot and a garbage can right next to Calumet Avenue. So there's some concern from that perspective as it relates to the PUD. And one of the concerns that I have, Tom, is how are those implications and what those conversations were and what happens along Calumet Avenue going to be, imposed on this new scenario. Because if you're going to do new signage requirements based on the new ordinance, why not the new PUD requirements, and what would those changes be? So there's some consistency from the standpoint of how the town looks at that. So that was one of my, that was the 2 challenges that I saw as being something to be addressed, please. No, just to have you guys work out how that works, and then we can go from there. Wait, before you talk, so is there anybody else that has some questions?
I don't necessarily have a question, but I was thinking what you were about the parking, keeping it off of Calumet, just because that seems to be the way we are going forward as a town. To me, it makes sense to either do nothing or to do option 3. But I would not.
Yes, sir. Please state your name and your address and your involvement in this to help us.
Hi there, I'm Mike Boyle, Vice President of Development with CAST, and our address is 448 North of Sound, Chicago. Thank you again for your time this evening to kind of go through the overall plan in development, make sure we're on the same page with you. As Tom stated, previous to our ownership, there was an agreement that made sense when the engineered plans came out. This concept plan for the PUD was replaced with a drawing that provided, I believe, 5.7 spaces per 1,000 square foot within the adapted office space. That's essentially why we don't believe we should build to the south. We're in agreement that it makes no sense to build parking spaces to the south for the collective good of the unit development. I just want to clarify, if we could go back to the PUD drawing real quick, please, Tom. I know it was stated that there was a change or a modification, if you don't mind zooming in. We're truly not planning a modification. We're responding to a request for additional parking. Again, in this area that Rush is going into, we are very confident that there is enough parking. that there is not a need to build a sea of parking. That when the site to the south is developed, we can adjust and plan accordingly to accommodate. If I could come up over here, just don't touch the screen. It'll move around a little bit. So again, pointing to the north outlet that we're kind of discussing here, we're not proposing any changes by building these parking spaces to accommodate the 51 spaces that staff has requested to come before and talk to Plan Commission about. These were always right here. This is just essentially a sequencing of the PUD to accommodate the request by staff to come in here and present options to the Plan Commission.
So you're saying that you're looking at putting parking at that particular location because of staff requirements?
Well, from a 2019.
Just asking, I'm 22 here.
Correct. Yes. Okay. we would propose to move forward with option A if possible and figure out the parking when we were able to develop this north outlet in this future office building. That would be our strong preference, to allow Rush to go in there and put their facility in there as was planned. It's an 18,000 square foot space building. It's got enough parking. If we add those additional spaces by Rush, we're increasing the parking to nearly 10 spaces per 1,000 square feet. That's almost double what the code requires. And that makes zero sense to us. We agree. We want to make sure there's the right amount of parking for the users. Plan 2 allows us to accomplish that in a shared parking space setting. It's part of the plan unit development. That's just a phasing of that. We're not asking for any modification to PUD, just a sequence of it for us allowed to do that.
This is a rendering of, I wonder what it would look like in the future. Can you have something that's up there now so we can have an assessment of what building Rush is going into, where this park, I'm assuming it's page 8, and that option 3 with the 65 spaces. You're saying your tenant doesn't need those 65 spaces now?
No, sir.
No. So the town right now, per requirements, are looking to make you add those, even though it's not required for your tenant. So more hard surface on the plan.
I believe the 2019 Plan Commission meeting required it, or it was a request in the initial concept plan to have 181, and there was a concession in that 2019 meeting to only require the 129. And those additional 51 spaces were punted, or I say till a later date, to once the balance of the building was built out.
Thank you, Tom. Isn't it under the premise that those spaces also serve whatever structure went south of there as well as a cross-access parking agreement?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So at some future, you might need more parking, but until you put the structure up, you don't know quite what that is yet.
I believe correct. The PUD with the building to the south shows the adequate parking to the south. It would, there's concept plans out there that allow for building in that space to have parking that would satisfy the requirements within code and not require these stipulated 51 spaces in this area. So that's why Plan 3 really is not an option for us, or not a preference. It's building parking spaces that were, for a concept plan.
So for my 2 cents, having heard what you said, is that make them put in more parking spaces that aren't currently required doesn't make much sense.
So the one thing I would just clarify is this is the master plan that was adopted by the Plan Commission and the Town Council. So this is the law of the land, so to speak, for this particular development.
And I'm just looking to move this to a public hearing.
And what I'm just going to explain is that when each one of these properties is developed, there are a certain number of parking spaces associated with it.
I agree.
So there's the building and then there's the lot.
I agree.
And with the adapted office building, the lot that was associated with it was a 181 space parking lot. So that's why that's being brought up, and that's why it was brought up in 2019. So again, the Plan Commission voted to give the applicants and the developer a reprieve from installing all of those spaces. When the current applicant came in and suggested that they didn't want to build the spaces, staff's response was, you have to go back to the Plan Commission because a commitment was made to the Plan Commission to build those spaces. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you.
And so couldn't we just retrieve it again until that new building is built and then have them commit to it then?
That's what option one is proposing.
Right.
Yeah, I
And
did
that's
have,
still on the table.
That would be the direction that they're requesting for the plan commission would be either delay the construction of the parking lot, that's their preference, build the 51 spaces in the lot 7, or to want to build it in the adapted office building.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Can I ask a question? So if we would then go with option one, it leaves lot 7 not putting more asphalt in this development. What's
Currently, until they build new buildings.
Until they build, yeah, I'm just wondering what sort of degrees of freedom would that open up for you? I mean, I know that would take a change to the plan unit development, but do you have thoughts, since the town's view on parking along major arteries has changed? I think Tom could maybe correct me, but if this wasn't a plan unit development and new development would come in, the building facade would be in the front, the parking would be in the back. I'm just curious, do you have ideas, or do you plan to put another building there, or is there another use of that lot 7 that you would could contemplate?
I believe right now that the concept plan, I agree with Tom, how he clarified that. I appreciate that, Tom. The staff has worked with us on this to try and come up with the best options. I would say that the way that the parking is configured in the PUD, the way that we have it drawn up in option 2 allows for the spaces in a shared use setting, which this is, which we acknowledge that they're put in the right place. When you go into the main building, those spaces can be parked in and can the users can actually enter into the building when they want to. And we can integrate that into the signage package, let folks know that that's where the critical mass is for certain buildings. And it can still allow for development to occur on the southern half of that outlot, which is shown as such in the PUD. Certainly, once you build some of those spaces, they're kind of allocated towards the building, but we would be able to certainly have that discussion to see what the need in that use is and what code requires per space per square footage. I'm sure that could be modified at a later date.
Thank you.
For the sake of moving things along, is there anything else? Looking for a motion to set this for public hearing.
Could I clarify? Sorry. Is there a chance that we might be able to move the discussion in terms of which option is preferred? Option 1 or 2 would be the goal. So if we had to go for option 2, we would be able to start the engineering, start the spending of our money as suggested earlier, and start to construct the building, because it would be associated with the build out of our town, and we don't want to delay that any further.
Mr. Wickman, I mean, in setting something for a public hearing, we're looking for direction as far as a vote. I mean, how does that work in this program?
I think that the pivotal issue now is public hearing. Very simple. Should be a motion. If they want to talk to staff between now and that public hearing, that's fine.
Nice try.
Is there a strong preference either way?
We talked before about what seemed to make sense. I had mentioned option 2 in light of the discussion and the information presented. Option 1, from my view, is acceptable, reasonable, makes sense.
And I agree, but my suggestion is to work on that, but to plan forward. And here's whom you're targeting for specific locations and what you think those particular uses are, and have that kind of already in your mind when you sit down with staff. And then that way you can take it in segments or bites at a time to the point where, hey, based on today, this is what's going on, because this is not anything what it looked like when I first saw it. I get it. Does that help? Ish. It's government.
So to clarify then, we're gonna have a public hearing next month where we fully develop option 2 and present that. I'm sorry, I'm new to this. I'm trying to understand what our next step is.
So if I can just jump in here.
Sure.
Educate me.
The new person understand what it means. I can't wait to hear it.
The plan commission can't take action tonight on any one of these options. Right? Have to wait until the public hearing to take action. But the sense that I'm getting from the board based on the discussion is that option 1 would be acceptable. And that's what I'm thinking, that you would be putting forward as your application would be option 1, which is the no build.
Got it. Thank you.
Seems to not for there.
Okay.
That's where we're going.
Okay, folks, trying to move this thing along. The action requested is set this for public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we schedule a public hearing for BC docket number 22-015 to consider development plan for the signage parking area for Rush University Group at Lake Business Center PUD at 92 on
I second the motion.
The development plan, is there any discussion? We get to do a voice vote. Is that true, Mr. Wickman? Yes. Holy cow. All right, all those in favor of that motion for a public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Look forward to seeing you next one. All right, next one up is public hearings. First one is PC docket number 22-011, Time Equities, represented by Ovid Marsh, requesting approval of preliminary plan for a re-subdivision, Center Ridgewood Development, a 2-lot commercial subdivision on 300 to 332 Ridge Road. They didn't do what they were supposed to do by advertising for public hearing, so it must be deferred. Is that true, Mr. Vanderwood? Yes or no, please?
Yes.
Yes. So I need a motion to be able to defer this to next month. Is there a preference? To defer just in perpetuity.
Till next month.
Till next month. There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second. Any
discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? There none. Giddy up. Next up, 22-010, Karma Cigar Bar LLC, represented by Joseph Sledenoff, requesting approval of a development plan for a restaurant and a cigar bar at 9450 Calumet Avenue in the Maple Leaf Crossing PUD. Mr. Vanderwood, short and sweet. We've seen this before.
Yeah, this was approved last month, actually, but there was a condition put on the approval for the development plan for the cigar bar that said that final approval would be granted upon plan commission review of 2 things. 1, the screening of the mechanicals.
Oh yeah, where are the mechanicals going?
The ventilation system.
All right,
They will
so
show
we're doing
you.
this, okay.
And then 2, some description of how the internal water feature would work. So those were the 2 sort of outstanding items or conditions from that approval last month. And the applicant has provided detailed materials regarding screening that I believe are being handed out to you now.
So this is just strictly on the screening because everything else is approved, correct?
The screening and the water feature. So the screening information is being handed out now, and the water feature inside the buildings has been removed altogether.
So there is no water feature.
Correct.
Okay, so.
Is there a water feature on the outside of the building, so?
Well, it was a waterfall, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's where this is, and they'll correct us, I'm sure, but that's, I think we're now all of the equipment for the restaurants and the actual ventilation is going to sit. So that was right above this area. So now it looks like it's screened in and it's all equipment. So it looks like there's no asphalt. No.
This is, that's correct. There was this is the major change to the plans that you saw previously. This was shown as being an open area. It's now shown to be a screen.
So it's no longer a public area. Cool. All right. Is that the only thing that on this particular public hearing?
That's it. Everything else was approved last
Okay.
month.
Hold on, folks. Is there anything for the commissioner to be able to ask staff before I let these folks talk? No? Either none? Hello, help us understand what's going on. Your name and address, please.
Commissioner Baker, Attorney Joseph Svetnoff, 9801 Connecticut Drive, Crown Point, Indiana. Here on behalf of the petitioner, I'd like to tonight is introduce Vishali, who's the architect of the project, and she better well take you through what has been adjusted in the plan.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, hi, Vishali.
office address 161 North Park, Suite 1600, Chicago, Illinois. I'm representing Dwayne Rashad and Ambassador Architects here. From last hearing, the comments that we had was to wherever the HVAC units and exhaust units are, that we screen them. So we added those screens and they're shown in the rendering. The other concerns that there was to do with the waterfall feature. And there were safety issues that were brought in. So we removed the water feature altogether completely. And it kind of amended the plan to present it today in front of the commission for seeking approval.
So we heard you and we amended the plan as such. Thank you. Is there any questions for these folks investing in our community? So we talked about, I'll talk because everybody's shut. So all of the equipment, is this all just for the cigar bar? Is this also kitchen exhaust and HVAC for the entire structure? Is this the full mechanical setup for the entire building?
Yes, correct.
Okay, it's all in this particular location. Is there any challenges? I'm not a mechanical or MEP engineer, nor do I ever want to be, but having hung out with them, is there any challenges with the ventilation system and being brought back into the building through the HVAC system if they're set up in this type of a design?
No, this is most comprehensive and the best way to solve the problem.
So when they're ventilating the cigar smoke, it's not going to get blown back into the restaurant?
No, yeah,
okay.
Direct outside air supplies.
Okay. Thank you. That was my only question. Yes, ma'am.
Hello. So the screening around the units, what is that material? Is that
we provided the specifications material, this color selection in the package.
I'm sorry. Okay. So I guess what I'm looking, when I look here, it seems like it'll be screened completely when I see here. But then when I look up here in this picture, it seems like you might be able to see the outline, like that with the light, you'd be able to see the outline that they're black. So I'm not asking like for you to change it. I'm just wondering if these are like louvers, they'll be able to, so you can't actually see the outline. You can't?
Yeah, they're at
Okay, so you just did that so we could see it from,
yeah,
where they're located.
Different variations depending on what level of visibility you want. So we will definitely select the one that is completely.
I see. Okay, I just want to make sure you couldn't see the
you can't
blocks. All right, cool.
Anyone else? All right, this is a public hearing, so thank you very much. I will now open this to the public to see if anybody would like to comment on it. If you would, please step to the podium, state your name without those folks guarding it. I mean, the huge amount of people are going to come in here.
We brought copies for them.
All right, going once, going twice. All right, be there no public comment, I will close the public sector of this scenario, bring it back to the board to do something.
I just have one more question for the
Yes,
petitioner.
ma'am.
I'm just wondering, I know we talked about the non-smoking hours up till, I believe, it was 8 o'clock. So, and this is going to seem very specific, but will the piano music start before then? So some of us non-smoking. Yeah.
You're asking if the piano music will start?
You know why? Because if I want to go and I don't want to be in the smoke, can I still enjoy the piano music? Yes.
7 to 10.
7 to 10.
So we'll have a little, okay.
So you have an hour of piano music.
I don't think, and Mr. Baker, Commissioner Baker, I don't think I will be the
Councilwoman,
only one
that's
interested.
that made
in
it the whole night absolutely outstanding.
You know what, that's why I'm here.
I have a, but if we have a Commissioner Mellon or any of us, we will make sure that it's not smoking for that time.
Oh.
I have a,
after me. Yes, sir.
I have a question in a similar.
I'm just kidding. I get tired too, but I like to smoke a cigar at 6 o'clock.
No,
And I have to be home and sleep, and, you know.
We'll work it out. We'll work it out.
Inside, outside?
We'll have a rotating schedule.
I like it. Councilman, thank you.
I was unable to be here last time, so I didn't see the water feature. So I'm just curious, like, how sad are you to lose the water feature?
Not sad at all. We just want to get the project going.
Yeah, not to bring it up again, but was it an important feature for the building?
No, it wasn't an important feature. It was aesthetics.
Yeah.
And we're glad to remove that aesthetic feature to get the project going.
Look really cool. It just makes sense.
Yeah, but it's still cool looking inside. Right, yeah.
Well, we're about to talk.
Okay, any other questions? If not, we're still at the same point.
I move to approve the screening of mechanicals and the removal of the second floor water feature for the Karma Bistro and Cigar Lounge development plan in the Maple Leaf Crossing and unit development and 9450 Calumet Avenue.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
And a second. Any discussion? Either none. Mr. Vanderwood, we just do a voice? Mr. Winkling, yes?
Yep, yes.
Voice. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? I am liking that. Either none. Thank you very much. Good luck. Can't wait.
Thank you for your time.
All right, next up, PC 22-013, Maple Leaf Crossing LLC requesting approval of an amendment to the Maple Leaf Crossing Plan Unit Development to permit a restaurant and cigar lounge at Lot 7 of the Maple Leaf Crossing PUD at 9410-9470 Calumet Avenue. Mr. Vanderwood, can we just approve that?
You approved the development plan, but it was contingent upon planning and development actually being approved. The amendment of planning and development. So as we discussed at the preliminary hearing, Maple Leaf Crossing LLC is a planning and development. Lot 7 had originally been approved as a pub with much smaller footprints, 2,700 square feet.
How many, I'm sorry?
2,700 square feet. And it's being, the proposal here is to amend the PUD to modify Lot 7 so that it would now include it is Lot 7. So that it would be a 6,400 square foot cigar bar and restaurant. So that's the major modification to the PUD that's being requested. In addition to that change of use, there was a site plan that was approved, which had a much smaller building on it. That site plan is being replaced in the PUD with this plan shown here for Lot 7, which just has different building footprint, different use, different parking requirements. So those are the amendments that are being requested. And the only thing that I'll mention is that in addition to submitting their plans, the applicant did submit a new parking and traffic study. Overall parking, similar to like business center, this is a shared parking arrangement. So there are 358 parking spaces within the plan unit development. The original parking study that was submitted calculated 350 total shared spaces would be required. That included 40 spaces for the pub. The revised study that was submitted last month and provided in your packet here indicates that 52 spaces or 12 more than the pub are required for the proposed cigar bar. Study also reduced the number of spaces required for the hotel from 86 to 75, and the number of spaces required for the proposed restaurant from 56 to 32. I'll just note that it's about half the number that would be required by the Munster zoning ordinance for that use. So they recalculated the number of required spaces to be 364. You'll note that that exceeds the 358 spaces on site. But they drilled down a little bit farther and actually looked at when the different peak hours would be for each use. And based on that analysis, they determined that they actually only need 295 spaces at any given time during the day. So based on the study that was submitted, they are well below using their parking to capacity. So given that the development plan was approved and continued upon the plan unit development amendment being approved, I would recommend that the Plan Commission vote for a favorable recommendation to the Town Council to adopt this proposed amendment to the Maple Leaf Crossing Plan unit developments.
All right, thank you. Bring it back to the commission. Is there any questions for staff?
Quick question. So how many bike parking spots do we have around here?
Total on the sites? Don't know if that was ever tallied, to be honest with you, but I
just
know.
reading here, it says a bike parking area with 7 spaces provided on site west of the building. Is this specifically for just a cigar bar?
Yeah, that's shown actually just like right here on the site plan. I can zoom if you want, but that's just simply
for this
for the cigar bar.
Okay, all right. No, that was my question. All right.
Anybody else? Come on, Rich, you have to have a
Well,
question.
is there a way to make sure, to approve the usage of this lot as long as we get some sort of agreement that that restaurant lot along Calumet is maintained as more of a family restaurant? I mean, that's something that we can request. I mean, that's what it's allocated as, but this one is changing, from pub restaurant to.
So yeah, so that's ordained in that plan unit development that's what that use has to be. If the use were to change, similar to what's happening tonight, it would go to the Plan Commission. There'd be a public hearing, and then the Plan Commission would make a recommendation to the Town Council. So there's no really greater guarantee than what's already in place, which is in the PUD ordinance.
Hold on a second. So Tom, I have a question. So right to the north of this particular building, that's the hotel, correct?
Yes.
All right, so is the front door of lot 7 or somewhere, I'm not so sure with this cool looking building where the front door is, but do you know where it is as it relates to the hotel? Is it facing the hotel? Is it facing east, west?
It's facing east.
It's facing, it's over there. So for all the parking there, if I'm parking and if I am going to this facility, I want to go to the front door, so I'm more apt to park in that lot just to the east of lot 7. And lot 6 hasn't been decided on how many square feet that there is going to be there. Correct?
7,700.
Well, this one was 27. Hold on, this one was 27. Now it's 63. So it changes.
The box is 3,000. We went vertical.
The box is 37.
It's 3,000.
Yeah. So the question is that, and this is cross-access parking, so within the PUD, anybody can park anywhere and there's no defined access to that.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that the assumption is that in this development, you may not be able to park directly in front of the front door of the business that you're visiting. You may have to find a space somewhere in the development,
or ride my bike.
You're gonna walk.
Or ride bike or walk, even better. But I think the idea is that the entire site is going to be activated so that even though you're parking maybe 3 storefronts down from where you want to go, it's an interesting enough walk that you won't really.
I fully understand. We just had to understand how this thing was oriented. Is there anything else? If not, I'm going to bring up the petitioner. I'll bring up the petitioner. Does anybody like to speak on behalf of this before I open it up for public hearing?
There was one question. I have a question.
Sure.
Councilor Coulthard has asked about the bike parking, and I think I recall there was a bike path that goes on the outside and also through the development.
Yes.
Is the bicycle parking here located near where people are most likely to ride their bikes.
Come on up and introduce yourself as the petitioner and state your name and whatnot, sir, and you can answer that question first.
David Beach, 1630 Cherry Blossom Drive. Councilman Tulowitzki, the bike path was relocated to the north side of the property. I believe the town had a grant for the bike path that required it to have a crossing at a protected intersection, because Maple Leaf Crossing will have a signal light. We moved the bike path to the north side of the property, so it will connect up with the signal.
And in the property, I know this might not be germane to lot 7, but is there also bicycle parking contemplated where that?
Yes.
Where the path goes?
That has not changed at all. And in fact, the site development, lot 7 is exactly the same size and exactly the same location. Everything else about the site development has stayed the same. What has changed is the building, which was originally a 1-story pub, 2,710 square feet, is now 3 stories. It is 6,400 square feet, but I believe that the footprint is about 3,000 feet. So the building that you've just approved is really the only change that we have to the entire site.
Okay, and I will note that it looks pretty spacious inside as well.
Yes.
I don't imagine this being jam-packed 6,400 square feet.
No, there's a lot of open spaces. And I just point out here, the traffic study that we had commissioned noted that our peak usage will be 295 according to the manual. That assumes that Karma Cigar Bar will have 100% occupancy from noon to 2. And that's what the manual requires. There may be 100% occupancy of people smoking cigars at noon, but based upon their previous experience, their larger customer base will be in the evening. So I think that 295 number is actually skewed up from what we're going to see between noon and 2.
Thank you.
Mr. Beach, anything else to add as the petitioner?
Well, I mean, you asked about the orientation of the building. It is facing to the east. When you're facing to the east, you'll see parking both north and south. They're equidistant from the entrance. This will encourage some use of the southern parking for access to this building. We think that is a good way to lay it out to make full usage of the parking around the facility.
And I'm looking at the old plan versus what you submitted here, and it looks like where the water feature wasn't being eliminated. It's just the staircase or the secondary fire exit to leave the building. Is that true?
Mr. Baker, I have to approach to see what you're looking at.
You bet. Oh, no.
This was originally a water feature here. That is no longer going to be a water feature.
It looks like it's also stairs. Was all that stairs, or was that all a water feature?
There is a terrace step up to the.
Because I'm assuming this staircase, Mr. Beach, if that's your fire exit.
Right, and you have this terrace steps that goes up to the rooftop patio with the retractable roof.
So,
but there's no longer any water feature in that area.
Right, but that's still a point of ingress and egress that'll be paid attention to by the practitioner to make sure everything is okay over there.
That's a spiral stair, right? That can't be fire.
Well, that's a good point.
An interior stair would be.
So that's an exterior stair.
Yeah. I mean, you haven't gotten to that point. Is that what you're saying? We're just wondering what that spiral staircase is for. Is it just to look? I mean, it's not like it's not a fire exit. Right?
No, it's a secondary exit. You can have one exit inside.
Yeah.
So I can come into the establishment up that spiral staircase.
Yeah, you can move between different levels. Yes.
As a 60-year-old man, really?
Yeah, there's an elevator inside. There's an elevator inside.
No, right, in the winter.
That's where the bike.
Oh, got it.
That's a bike spiral.
All right, so that's not something, Tom, that's a requirement from site plan or the fire department. It's aesthetic.
that was never brought up by either a building
I mean, it is,
inspector or a fire.
That's why I'm here.
it just like it, you know, it makes me feel like it might eventually go away.
Okay, anything else for the petitioner? Thank you, sir. All right, so doing the public sector thing, this is a public hearing, so at this point I will open it up to the vast amount of people that want to come up and speak on this particular issue. I will open that up to the public sector now. Mr. Beach quits guarding the microphone.
I'm just. Right here. Gotta follow the rules.
Going twice. 3 times. I'll close the public hearing, bring it back to the commission.
I move to forward a favorable recommendation to the town council to approve PC docket number 22-013, amending the Maple Leaf Crossing plan unit development to permit a restaurant and cigar lounge on lot 7 in the Maple Leaf Crossing PUD at 9410-9470 Calumet Avenue.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
And a second. Any discussion? Either or none. Mr. Vanderwood, what do you want to do? Voice vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? None. Congratulations. Looking forward to seeing this, and I can't wait to go there with Miss Mellon and have a cigar.
At 6 p.m.
At 6 p.m.
When the piano be down,
I mean, you know, whatever that we could do, that'll be fun.
Yeah.
Will you sell those ball gum cigars?
There you go.
Oh, there you go. I can do that.
All right, moving right along. How am I doing, Mr. Vanderwood? Finding the fact, have there none other business additional items for discussion?
I do have one item for discussion. Put something up here on the screen. Bear with me 1 second. We had an official formal kickoff for the Munster Comprehensive Plan last week. This is the first plan that's been completed since 2010, so it's overdue, I think.
We were all there, right?
I guess everybody.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to listen to it again.
Well, yeah.
We set the town council this spot, the next one.
It's going to have to be next week. We have to do findings of fact. Yeah. Okay. So you were already there. So I don't really know what to say. Normally, there's some more people here, but
everyone was there, and me.
Yeah.
All of that.
Yeah.
So you probably also got the email then that said the website is live. So hopefully you have a chance to go to it.
I went to the website, Tom, and I couldn't find the survey.
No.
No.
Okay. Well, then
The link that I had, is others are sharing it with people.
I put it on WhatsApp. Do you see it?
No, I didn't.
So if you go to the website, you just scroll down and it's the online questionnaire right here. You click on that and that goes to it's called the questionnaire. Yeah, maybe the questionnaire. And then this is actually an interesting tool that we have with this plan. It's map.social. So if you have a chance, go on to this. In fact, you can see some people have already added some maps to this. Let's see.
So what do you do with that?
What you do is you, I'll show you.
Oh yeah, there are more words now.
If you go here and click on 6 contributors,
Really?
you can see the maps that some people have already put on here. We'll go to this one. This Munster resident 1985. I don't know who that was.
So they can put their own map on this site.
Right, but you can drop little icons on here and then.
For what purpose?
Yeah, I was going to say why.
It's just like a public input.
To engage the public.
Right, you can say,
okay.
For example.
So I can put my demo office up there, right?
You could.
Absolutely.
Demo this building.
Well, show Tom, just do one, for example, because I was trying to read the one.
Once your planning commission wants to put a map thing on there.
So for example, well, this is a negative comment here
Sorry.
about
I'm not sure if you want.
shops.
Okay.
But
That's real. When the Oak Bills Water Chairman impacted like Munster.
Accident prone intersection, right? So that's something that we can take a look at, but you might put something like need a bike path here, right? Or missing connection. Oh, here's one actually.
So like a virtual meeting when everybody sits and draws on the whiteboard.
Exactly.
Got it. Kind of put a smiley face up there. That's how I would lead it in for old people. This is what you would do if you came to the meeting. We could write out.
Yeah, it's like in the olden days, you could throw a map on the table and everyone.
Yeah.
But this will be open for, this will be open for a much longer time, so people can come back if they see something they can add to it. And then at the end, it'll all get compiled into one map. We'll take a look at it and say, okay, this is an area that needs to be fixed or whatever. So again, it's just another way of engaging with different people who may not be able to make it to a meeting or something like that.
Am I reading that one properly, that there are already 42 likes on this comment?
I can't see that one.
It's connecting the, right,
Yeah.
that's where we're having
My
the
kids
issues,
would call
right?
it sus. Call it what? Suspect. Suspect.
That means Councilman Tulowitzki can't vote 41 times.
So anyway, so that's cool. Something to do. The next, you already heard, but the next public involvement opportunity, we're going to do a public visioning meeting. Hopefully we'll have hundreds of people out to participate. And then we're also going to do a special business roundtable where we just meet with local business owners. And, so those are the next things that we have coming up. And yeah, if you get a chance, if you could email this out, tell your friends and colleagues and peers. Again, we're really at the beginning. There's nothing in the plan yet, so it's an empty vessel just waiting for everybody's ideas.
Is there a calendar of events on the website?
We do have a calendar. We don't have we have a timeline. We don't have specific dates for it.
Is Laverne building this? What's their company's name?
Hauser Levine.
Hauser Levine. Are they building this?
Yes.
All right, so if they could put on, like, Rachel said, when the meeting dates are on the first page, that would be helpful, just so if people get to it, they know when the next in-person one is available.
Yeah, we haven't set those dates yet, but we will. Okay, so that's all I have as far as other business. I guess maybe one other thing, since looks like Steve Johnson. It's not quite 10 o'clock yet, so we have some time.
Oh, absolutely not. It's not.
I'll just give an update. We did have a site plan review meeting last week. We had 3 items on the agenda. One was a build out of, actually there were 2 build outs in Centennial Building G. One was a financial planning, and one was a coffee shop. So we got those 2.
With gelato.
Yeah, with gelato. So we got those 2 new tenants coming into Centennial Building G. We did get the Indiana design release for building F, which is the building just north of building G.
Condo building.
It's just a retail building, the corner of 45th and Centennial Drive.
And we got a what?
Small building.
Oh.
We got the Indiana State design release. That just means that
another permit.
They're drawing up the plans for it, so that still has to come to the plan commission for approval. But that's moving forward. And then the other project, and you may have seen this online or somewhere. Crew Car Wash has purchased the Munster Car Wash, and they purchased the lot to the northwest of the Munster Car Wash. There's a retail store and a house. And so they came to the site plan review committee meeting proposing to demolish those. It might be easier for me to just pull it up on the map here.
So they're gonna
make a car wash.
They're making a car wash. They're gonna pull it the length of
to the corner.
Ridge Road.
Yeah.
It's on Forest Avenue.
And to that corner.
And so did they have to get permission from us to do that?
So this is the I might actually have the site plan on the screen here.
It's almost like, in my opinion, that was a cute little shop, and I liked kind of the feel of the scale.
Did they close it already? Oh, they did.
Yeah, she sold everything.
You didn't buy enough, Rachel.
I guess I didn't.
Well, here, first, this requires a subdivision.
A lot of work here. Is this the heads up or?
Yeah, this is just a FYI because it's, like I said, it's been talked about and we just, the first. So we just got over to look at it.
It's a lot of approvals.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is the existing car wash has this building here and this building, right? This portion. You can kind of see it in the aerial.
Right.
And then this is actually this is the retail building and this is that house. Right. So the plan would be to demolish the house, the retail building, and then the west portion of the car wash and just leave this area here intact.
Oh, so the car wash stays, it's just taking down the two houses or the two other structures.
And
absolutely.
So how are you gonna, so you're gonna get in off of Ridge Road?
You don't have a car wash though.
So
Beautiful residential street. Yeah.
this, basically they would leave this garage door and everything here would be eliminated. So everything, just one garage bay, everything to the west would be demoed. Along with, you see that's the retail building, then there's the house behind it. And the plan, and we can't get into it too much because they're not here to talk about it. So I've been told we can't really talk too much about it, but I'm just giving you information. The plan would be to enter off of Ridge Road, go through the car wash from the north, come out to the south, then move here through the parking lot, and then exit out of this alley, which the alley goes all the way to Woman Avenue, so that would be the path that they would travel. And okay, this area would be these are all vacuum stations.
So Tom, the only entrance is going to be where the cars are gonna be going in. So a car is not gonna be able to come back out of the car wash and go straight back out onto Ridge Road.
Well, we had this conversation. The plan that's shown here has this entire area open. Right. This is the curve from here all the way to here. So you'd have you can come out here, you can come out here, you can go in here, you can go in here. The staff response to that was, no, that's not going to work. So
that's just like I'm visualizing the car wash I use on Indianapolis, right by the post.
Is it just because of the noise of the vacuum cleaners?
No, I'm talking about
getting in and out.
Cars are going to start.
Oh, stacking.
If you have 6 cars going through that car wash,
yeah,
and they start stacking, and one of the cars is trying to turn left onto Ridge Road to go east, and there's 3 other cars behind them during certain times of the day.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
It becomes a problem. It's just like
you're talking about leaving the car wash, right?
That's the problem I have in Hilo. Whenever I take my car.
Right, which is always you got to go right turn.
They changed it to just a turn right only, because of that reason. But even then.
And then you're gonna have the issue if they have the folks that I just want to come in and vacuum because I just spilled my coffee and they're trying to go while I'm going in. So, but this is the congestion that has when you push retail up against the street, and it's just like John's and going in and out of John's in that nice residential street. You have a lot of people parking there. Now, granted, it isn't a car wash, I get it, but what is going to be the high volume times? Saturday morning, Sunday morning usually is when people do that. Yeah, when it gets nice, yeah. I mean, so it's not all the time. So
it's almost like they're gonna have to force the cars leaving.
I don't like that many
vacuum and going out to the alley. I just know it's gonna become dangerous. That's all I know. Because even on Ridge Road, trying to hang a left there certain times of day, that's a challenge in itself. You just go to Strax. So
the other thing maybe to consider is post streetscape implementation. What might be traffic implications?
Yeah.
If now that it's I think it's still 2 lanes each direction there. So eastbound or westbound, you could have 2 lanes. That I believe will be down to 1.
the other challenge staff is going to have is that crew is a large organization. They're going to want to keep their same structure the best they can wherever they go. So one suggestion is, do you have another location that has this type of footprint or situation to see if they can help with ideas, as opposed to just saying no?
It is a very stuff. I mean, true as far as car washes go, if you use them, they're pretty cool. They're like, there's one in Maryville by Patillo's or something. I mean,
There's one up by Myers.
it's pretty high end.
It's a high end car wash.
If you had to have a car wash, probably be worse than this outfit, but it's a tough spot.
What kind of approvals they need? Like there are all kinds of variances, correct, and subdivision. I mean, it's not a.
Yeah, that's good.
And it's a conditional use.
Yeah, so a car wash would be a conditional use, so that's.
Even though it's already there?
Yeah, because it's changing so dramatically that it's, and the other, yeah, so.
What was that, Mr. Whitman?
I just said, you can't say it's being grandfathered. Time is expired from when it was in business and when it closed. Right?
It's already been on a business point in 1 year.
Really?
Well, I don't know if that's the case, but
it's.
this, so there's a couple things, yeah, that need to happen. One, it's a subdivision, right? Because there's two lots here. There's the existing car wash lot, which is like an L that wraps around the lot where these two buildings are on. So you have to consolidate the lots into a single lot. The plan as shown here would require a number of variances.
Can I make a suggestion? Instead of having a curb cut here, which looks like and one here, stop this one, make everybody go out like this.
That's what I said.
Right.
That's kind of what we talked about.
Okay.
Good, great suggestion.
Well, I didn't see it. I can't see the visual without looking at the picture.
Yeah, no, I get it. This is again, this is just what was presented. I'm just giving it for information. But yeah, what's presented here would require conditional use approval all the way down to car wash, subdivision, variances, multiple variances, and then approval of the development plan.
There's no alley. It just sucks. I can tell you from coming out of Bateman times. Sometimes you can't turn right. Well, you can't turn left. But you can't turn right. This is Jackson.
It looks like an
Okay. All right, anything else, Tom? Okay, Mr. Chairman? Mr. Chairman, I move that we adjourn.
I second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We didn't get a second.
I did.
Oh,
I said it.
all right, aye.
I was fast.
We adjourn.
September 13th. Doc's ready.
Where did we shop?
Social.